Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, Bachelor Nation News. Fans, the world watched in stunned silence as Joan Vasoss, the ever-graceful Golden Bachelorette, stepped onto the dimly lit stage. Her signature smile, once bright and unwavering, now trembled at the edges, as if holding back a storm of sorrow. For months, fans had speculated about the distance growing between her and Chock Chapple, her charismatic partner who had once made her eyes sparkle like morning sunlight. Tonight, Joan would speak, but the truth she carried was heavier than any headline could capture. She took a deep breath, her fingers clutching the microphone like a lifeline. Every step she had taken toward this moment had been rehearsed in her mind, but now, as the bright cameras focused on her, rehearsals crumbled like dry leaves. "Good evening," she began, her voice quivering. "I never imagined I'd have to say this. Not here, not like this, but I owe it to all of you, and to myself." Her words hung in the air, fragile and raw. "Chock and we've made the heartbreaking decision to part ways." A collective gasp rippled through the audience and the millions watching from home. Social media exploded in real time, hashtag Joan Vasoss heartbreaking farewell trending worldwide. But the story behind the heartbreak, the private struggle that had led to this moment, was far more complex than the world could see. Backstage, Joan had replayed their last months over and over in her mind. The laughter that once echoed through their shared moments now felt like echoes from a distant life. Chock had always been her anchor, his infectious energy balancing her poised serenity. Yet beneath the smiles, tension had brewed, a quiet ache neither could mend. Careers, expectations, personal demons, they had pulled them apart, slowly, insidiously, until love alone wasn't enough. She remembered their final night together vividly. The city was cloaked in rain, the streets shimmering like spilled diamonds. They had walked silently, shoulders brushing occasionally, the kind of intimacy that once made her heart race, now aching with quiet resignation. At their favorite cafe, Chock had reached across the table, his hand warm, seeking connection. She had taken it, knowing it would be the last time. "Joan," he had whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I'll always love you, but maybe love isn't enough anymore." Tears blurred her vision, yet she had nodded because she understood. Love, however deep, cannot always conquer life's complexities, and sometimes saying goodbye is the truest form of love. On stage now, she tried to steady herself, but a tremor ran through her body. "This isn't a decision made lightly," she continued, voice catching. "We loved fiercely, laughed endlessly, and dreamed together, but sometimes even the strongest love needs release, so that we may find peace, even if it's apart." Her gaze drifted briefly to the cameras, imagining Chock watching from somewhere far away, hoping he could see her strength beneath the sorrow. Fans' questions had been relentless. What happened? Did he cheat? Were there fights? The truth was simpler, yet infinitely more painful. Two hearts, devoted to each other, had grown in different directions, and no amount of hope could bridge the distance. The room was silent now, as if the world itself had paused to listen. Joan's voice softened, almost a whisper. "We part with gratitude, not anger. We carry the memories of joy, not the pain of separation. And though it breaks me to say goodbye, I believe it's the only way we can honor the love we had." She felt her knees weaken, the weight of public grief pressing down like a physical force. Behind her, the production team held their breath, unsure whether to step in, fearing the moment would shatter entirely. But Joan stood tall, letting vulnerability become courage. Fans, too, were crying, strangers united in shared heartbreak, tweeting their support and sending love across screens. Some shared memories of her most touching moments with Chock, the first time he brought her coffee on set, the private jokes during interviews, the way they leaned into each other as if the rest of the world didn't exist. Every memory now carried the bittersweet taste of what had been lost. When she finally stepped away from the microphone, the stage lights dimmed, leaving her in a soft, melancholy glow. Behind the scenes, she felt a strange mix of emptiness and liberation. The end of this chapter was painful beyond words, yet there was a fragile hope in acknowledging the truth. Some farewells are tragic, yes, but they also open the door to healing, to rediscovery, to life beyond shared dreams. Chock's absence was a shadow that would linger, but the love they had shared remained untarnished in her heart. Their journey together had shaped her in ways she couldn't articulate yet: strength, resilience, and the wisdom to recognize when holding on does more harm than letting go. As she exited the studio, Joan pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the heartbeat that had once synchronized with his. The city outside had shifted from rain to a quiet drizzle, the world unchanged yet irrevocably different for her. She knew that life would continue, that smiles would return, and that love, in all its forms, was never truly lost. Tonight, Joan Vasoss had revealed the end of a chapter, a tragic farewell that would echo in the hearts of millions. But within that heartbreak lay courage, a reminder that even the deepest pain carries a seed of hope, and that moving forward, even alone, is sometimes the most profound act of love. Heartbreak, and somewhere across the distance, Chock Chapel might have felt the same ache, but love, fleeting or enduring, had taught them both a truth they would carry forever. The bravest hearts are those that can love fully and let go gracefully.
Studio lights glimmered like fragile stars, but to Joan Vasoss they felt like piercing eyes, watching her unravel. The world had been waiting, watching every move, every smile, every glance between her and Chock Chapel. For months, rumors had swirled: tension, distance, whispers of heartbreak. Tonight, there would be no rumors. Tonight, Joan would reveal the truth herself. She took a shaky breath, gripping the microphone like a lifeline. "I never imagined I'd have to say this," she began, her voice trembling. "Not here, not like this, but I owe it to myself and to all of you to speak honestly." She paused, eyes glimmering with tears, reflecting the bright lights of the cameras. "Chock and we've decided to part ways." Gasps swept across the audience. Social media erupted instantly. Broken heart, crying face, hashtag Joan Vasoss, heartbreaking farewell, trending worldwide. Yet behind the public spectacle, Joan carried a personal grief no headline could capture. She remembered their last night together vividly: the rain-soaked streets, the muted city lights, and the quiet tension that had hung between them like fog. They had walked side by side, hands almost touching, hearts aching with unspoken words. At their favorite cafe, he had reached across the table, his hand warm and familiar. "Joan," he whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I'll always love you, but maybe love isn't enough anymore." Tears had blurred her vision, but she had nodded. Love, as deep as theirs had been, could not withstand the slow, relentless pull of reality. Careers, distance, personal struggles, all had conspired to push them apart. Saying goodbye was an act of courage, a final gift of love. On stage, Joan steadied herself. "This isn't a decision made lightly," she continued, her voice cracking. "We loved fiercely, laughed endlessly, and dreamed together. But sometimes even the strongest love must let go, to find peace, even if it's apart." She thought of the fans who had celebrated their every moment, the millions who had rooted for their happiness. She imagined Chock watching somewhere far away, hoping he could see her strength beneath the sorrow. Questions had flooded the internet. What happened? Did one of you cheat? Were there fights? The truth was simpler, yet infinitely more painful. Two hearts devoted to each other had grown in different directions, and sometimes love, no matter how pure, isn't enough. The silence in the studio was almost sacred. Joan's voice softened to a whisper. We part with gratitude, not anger. We carry the memories of joy, not the pain of separation. And though it breaks me to say goodbye, I believe it's the only way to honor what we had. Fans everywhere cried alongside her. Social media overflowed with messages. We loved you together. Stay strong, Joan. You deserve happiness always. Photos of them laughing, holding hands, leaning on each other in quiet moments now seemed both haunting and beautiful. After the show, Joan wandered through the rain-soaked city of the city, each step echoing the ache in her heart. She passed their favorite places, the park bench where Chock had confessed his love during a storm, the cafe where he knew her coffee order by heart, the bookstore where they had spent countless hours lost in stories. Each memory was a sharp pang, but also a reminder that love, even when it ends, leaves an indelible mark. At home, Joan sat in silence, holding a photo of them laughing together, a memory of a happier life. She scrolled through old messages, reading words that once brought comfort, now bringing tears. And yet, in that sorrow, a strange resilience emerged. Love, she realized, isn't always about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. Weeks later, a letter arrived, handwritten in Chock's familiar script. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. He wrote of gratitude, of love that would never fade, and of hope for both their futures apart. No pleas for reconciliation, no recriminations, only honesty, closure, and care. Joan pressed the letter to her chest, feeling the warmth of shared history, finally understanding that some endings could carry grace. Months passed, and Joan returned to the public eye, not for heartbreak, but for new beginnings. The sparkle in her eyes had returned, faint but unmistakable, the mark of someone who had loved deeply and survived. In interviews, she spoke of love, loss, and resilience. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about having the courage to step away, to heal, and to keep moving forward. Her farewell to Chock became a lesson in bravery. The world may remember the tears, the heartbreak, and the dramatic revelation, but Joan carried something more profound: the strength to honor love even in loss, and the courage to embrace life beyond heartbreak. And somewhere across the distance, Chock Chapel likely felt that same aching truth, that love, no matter its ending, leaves an eternal imprint on the soul. Broken Heart, Joan Vasoss' tragic farewell was not just a story of heartbreak, it was a story of courage, of vulnerability, and of hope. A reminder that even when love ends, the heart can endure, grow, and learn to love
were
again.
rolling, the studio lights glowing like 1,000 fragile stars, but Joan Vasoss barely noticed. She stood in the center of the stage, poised as always, yet the sparkle in her eyes, once bright and unstoppable, was now dimmed by a weight no smile could hide. Fans had been speculating about her relationship with Chock Chapple for weeks, whispering rumors and crafting endless theories. Tonight, there would be no ambiguity. Tonight, Joan would reveal the truth. Her voice trembled as she began, each word deliberate, heavy with sorrow. I never imagined I'd have to say this, not here, not like this, but I owe it to all of you and to myself. She paused, looking out into the audience, knowing millions were watching from their screens at home. Chock and I, we've decided to part ways. The room fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. Social media exploded within seconds. Broken heart, crying face.
Hashtag Joan Vasoss, heartbreaking farewell, trending worldwide. Yet behind the spectacle of fame and flashing lights, Joan carried a private grief, one that no headline could fully capture. She remembered their last night together with painful clarity. The city streets shimmered under the rain, each drop a reflection of the life they once shared. They walked side by side in silence, the kind of quiet intimacy that had once made her heart soar. At their favorite cafe, Chock reached for her hand, warmth lingering for a fleeting moment. "Joan," he whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I'll always love you, but maybe love isn't enough anymore." Tears had blurred her vision, yet she had nodded, knowing it was true. Some loves, no matter how deep, cannot survive the shifting tides of life. Careers, expectations, personal struggles, they had all conspired against them. Saying goodbye was not a choice of the heart, but a necessity. On stage now, Joan tried to steady her shaking hands. "This isn't a decision made lightly," she continued, her voice cracking. "We loved fiercely, laughed endlessly, and dreamed together, but sometimes even the strongest love needs release, so that we may find peace, even if it's apart." She thought of the millions of fans who had followed their journey, cheered for them, and celebrated their every moment. She imagined Chock watching from somewhere far away, hoping he could see her courage beneath the sorrow. People had asked the impossible. What went wrong? Was there betrayal? Did we fight? The truth was simpler and yet infinitely more painful. Two hearts devoted to each other had simply grown in different directions. The studio remained silent, as if time itself had paused to honor the gravity of her words. Joan's voice softened. "We part with gratitude, not anger. We carry the memories of joy, not the pain of separation. And though it breaks me to say goodbye, I believe it's the only way we can honor the love we shared." Her knees weakened slightly, the pressure of public grief pressing down like a tangible force. Behind her, staff held their breath, wary of intruding, but Joan stood firm, letting vulnerability shine as courage. Fans worldwide shared their grief online, their tears mirrored in thousands of posts and comments. They shared photos, quotes, and moments that had made the relationship magical. The gentle touch during interviews, the laughter in quiet corners, the shared silences that spoke volumes. Each memory now carried the bittersweet weight of loss. Later, Joan walked alone through the rain-soaked streets of the city. The quiet drizzle mirrored her emotions, each drop a silent witness to her heartbreak. She passed the park bench where Chock had once pulled her close during a rainy evening, the cafe where he had memorized her favorite coffee order, the bookstore where they had spent hours lost in stories. Every place was a memory, every memory a pang in her chest. At home, she sat with a cup of tea, staring at the framed photographs of happier days. She read old messages, smiles replaced by tears, laughter shadowed by absence. And yet, in that quiet despair, a strange sense of resilience began to grow. Love, she realized, isn't always about holding on, it's also about knowing when to let go. Weeks later, a letter arrived from Chock, handwritten and unmistakably his. He spoke of gratitude, of love that would never fade, and of hope that they would both find happiness apart. No pleas for reconciliation, no recriminations, just honesty, care, and closure. Joan pressed the paper to her chest, feeling the weight of shared history, and finally understood endings could carry dignity, even beauty. Months passed and Joan returned to the stage, not for heartbreak this time, but for new beginnings. Her eyes still held a hint of sorrow, but also the quiet strength of someone who had loved fully and let go gracefully. In interviews, she spoke of love, loss, and resilience. Sometimes love isn't about holding on. Sometimes it's about having the courage to step away, to heal, and to keep moving forward. Her farewell to Chock, though tragic, became a lesson in bravery. The world might remember the heartbreak, the tears, and the public revelation, but Joan carried something deeper: the strength to honor love even in loss, and the courage to embrace life beyond heartbreak. In the end, Joan Vasoss's tragic farewell was not only about losing love, it was about discovering the strength to survive it, the wisdom to let go, and the hope that even broken hearts can find light again. And somewhere, perhaps, Chock Chapel felt that same aching truth, that love, no matter its ending, leaves an eternal mark on the soul.
After leaving the studio, Joan didn't go home. She wandered the streets of the city alone, rain still misting the sidewalks, the neon lights reflecting in puddles like scattered fragments of a shattered dream. Each step felt heavy, as if gravity itself had intensified, pulling her heart down into an invisible void. She clutched her coat tighter around her, though the chill wasn't from the weather. It was from absence, from the hollow space that Chock's departure had left. She thought back to their first meeting, a serendipitous encounter at a charity gala. He had smiled at her, that easy, disarming grin, and suddenly the room seemed brighter. Every moment after that had been a crescendo: laughter over shared jokes, quiet midnight conversations, the brush of hands that made her feel alive. And now those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, a life she once lived but could never reclaim. Joan found herself at the little bridge they had loved, the place where they had promised each other forever under the soft glow of street lamps. She leaned against the railing, watching the river flow relentlessly below, a mirror of her own emotions, unstoppable and turbulent. The sound of rushing water was almost comforting, masking the sobs she could no longer hold back. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages they had exchanged over the months. Every "I miss you" and "good morning" carried a bittersweet sting. Her fingers hovered over Chock's name, tempted to reach out to hear his voice one last time, but she didn't. Some goodbyes, she knew, were meant to be permanent. She pressed the phone to her chest, inhaling sharply, feeling as though her lungs were filled with memories and sorrow. The next morning, news outlets exploded with headlines: "Joan Vasoss breaks silence on tragic split," and "Golden Bachelorette heartbroken, Chock Chapel farewell confirmed," crying emoji. Her social media notifications were flooded with messages, fans expressing grief, sharing their own heartbreak, and sending encouragement. Some comments cut deep: "You deserve better," "We can't believe it's over," "Joan and Chock were perfect." But mixed in were others urging her to stay strong, reminding her that even in tragedy there is hope. Joan read each comment carefully, tears brimming, but she felt a strange sense of connection. For the first time since the split, she realized she was not alone in her pain. Millions of people, separated by distance but united in empathy, were mourning with her. She took a deep breath, a tiny spark of strength flickering within her chest. Days passed, and life seemed to blur into a haze of interviews, photo shoots, and the constant buzz of social media speculation. Yet every night, Joan found herself retreating to quiet spaces, places that reminded her of Chock, his favorite cafe, the park bench where he once confessed his love, the corner bookstore they'd wandered through hand in hand. Each visit was a bittersweet pilgrimage, a way to honor a love that had ended but never truly vanished. Then came the moment that truly shook her, a handwritten letter tucked into her mailbox in Chock's familiar handwriting. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, recognizing the looping script immediately. He wrote of memories, of love that would never fade, of hope that they could both heal and find happiness, even apart.
He didn't ask for reconciliation, he simply wanted her to know that she was cherished, always. That letter became her anchor. Joan realized that heartbreak is not just about losing someone, it's about discovering resilience you didn't know you had. Each tear shed, each sleepless night, was part of the process of becoming stronger, more complete. Months later, Joan returned to that stage once more, not for a farewell, but for a new beginning. She smiled, still tinged with melancholy, but carrying the quiet dignity of someone who had loved deeply and let go with grace. She knew Chock would always be part of her story, a chapter that had shaped her, challenged her, and ultimately strengthened her. "Love doesn't always mean staying together," she said softly in an interview. "Sometimes it means knowing when to let go and trusting that life has more in store for us than we can imagine." Her words resonated far beyond the studio lights, echoing in the hearts of anyone who had ever loved and lost. In the end, Joan Vasoss's tragic farewell was not just about heartbreak, it was about courage, about embracing vulnerability, and about carrying love forward even when it no longer walks beside you. The world may remember the tears, the heartbreak, the dramatic revelation, but Joan would carry the lessons of love, loss, and resilience forever in her heart. And somewhere, across the distance, Chock Chapel likely did too. Broken heart, a love remembered, but a soul unbroken. Joan Vasoss's story reminds us that even in the darkest farewells, there is light waiting to return.